How's it going, my bakers? Welcome back to the channel. In today's video we're making pizza al formaggio, which is an Italian Easter bread full of cheese. So let's go to the kitchen and get started. Usually Easter breads are of the sweet variety, so I'm really happy to have come across this. A savoury, cheesy, festive bread slash cake, I guess. This is not the first time the Italians have given us a nice savoury Easter bread. Last year I posted a video for casatiello, a Neapolitan Easter cake. It was layered with meat and cheese and topped with whole eggs. Definitely one of the most unique Easter breads I've ever seen. But since this pizza al formaggio is supposed to be eaten with cold cuts and cheeses, the final flavors are kind of similar between them, and I like that. But while casatiello was not the easiest recipe, the pizza al formaggio could be made by anyone. You could make this even if you have never made bread before, and impress your friends and family for Easter, or just make a nice treat for yourself. So let's get right to it and see how it works. To make the dough we'll need some white bread flour, pecorino cheese. You could use parmesan instead, but then reduce the amount by a third, because it's quite a bit saltier. We'll need some eggs, some milk, some olive oil, yeast and black pepper. We'll need a little bit of butter for greasing our baking tin. It will just prevent our bread from sticking. And to give it a nice shiny glaze, we'll use an egg yolk mixed with a teaspoon of milk. You could just use a whole egg instead if you wanted to, but the yolk and milk combo just takes it up a notch. Okay, for the equipment, we'll need a bowl for mixing our dough in, scales, a dough scraper, a temperature probe, a brush for our glaze, a whisk, and a baking tin. I'm using a cake tin with a removable bottom. You could also use a 1.5 pound loaf tin. This cake tin that I'm using is 7.5 inches across, and that's about 19 centimeters. If you want to, use a tin with a smaller diameter to make a taller loaf. But I wouldn't suggest using a wider tin because the loaf will be too flat. Okay, while we're here, we might as well grease our tin. Take some butter and just rub it all over the surface. If you want you can use oil, but I prefer butter because it stays in place and doesn't drip down. Okay, the cake tin's prepped, let's get out of the way, let's start mixing our dough. My kitchen's around 23 degrees Celsius, which is 73 degrees Fahrenheit. We're aiming for a final dough temperature of around 24 degrees Celsius. So what I should have done is left my eggs at room temperature. See, now they are about 18 degrees Celsius. I was impatient, they're a little bit cool. As you'll see later, my dough will come out slightly cooler than it should. So I would suggest you just use your eggs at room temperature. So in a large bowl, combine the eggs, the milk, the olive oil, the yeast and the black pepper. Then get your whisk and give it all a good mix. Unlike pretty much any other dough that I've ever made, this one doesn't contain salt. And that's of course because it contains pecorino, which is pretty salty by itself. Once your ingredients are mixed up well, add the cheese and then mix again. The other thing that didn't help my temperature control is that I used my cheese from the fridge. But saying all this recipe is so basic you don't really need to worry about temperature control. If your dough comes out cooler, leave it to rise for longer. If it's warmer, it'll take less time, just keep an eye on it. Okay, once the cheese is mixed in, add the final ingredient, which is the flour. Then grab your dough scraper and mix it to a dough. Mix until there's no dry flour left. You won't be able to do it with a scraper all the way, so finish it off by hand. Squeeze it, press it, knead it just a little bit. We're not trying to develop any gluten here, that's not gonna happen. We just want all the flour to be hydrated and all the ingredients to be mixed in evenly. I would still consider this a no-knead dough. It may seem quite hard and tough, but that's exactly how it should feel like. Don't reach for extra eggs or milk. Once the bread is done, it'll be super light and fluffy. This is how it will look once it's fully mixed, not smooth at all. Okay, let's pop this in our prepped cake tin and then flatten it out so it fits the shape. It doesn't have to fit it perfectly, we just want to help it out a little bit so that by the time it's finished fermenting, it's filled the tray nicely. And once that's done, let's take the temperature for reference. Ideally you want this to be around 24 degrees Celsius, as you can see, mine was a little bit cooler. So it will take me around 4 hours of fermentation before I can bake this. If your dough is around 24 degrees Celsius, and if your kitchen is around the same temperature, it'll take you probably no more than 3 hours to ferment it. As I said earlier, don't worry about it too much. Just let it rise, once it's risen, bake it. Unless you've made it really cool, then just place it in a warm area to ferment. You want the dough to be about twice as tall once it's done. Make sure you preheat the oven before baking. 160 degrees Celsius, fan on, and that's 320 Fahrenheit for my American friends. And this one's ready. One last thing we need to do before baking is glaze it. If your cake tin has a removable bottom, then you may want to place it on a tray to avoid making a mess, because the egg might leak out a little bit. Okay, once it's all nicely glazed up, let's pop this bad boy in the oven. It'll take around 40 minutes to fully bake, and if you're not sure, take its temperature. If it reads above 94 degrees Celsius or 200 Fahrenheit, it's ready. It should have a nice golden brown dark crust. and that's of course thanks to the egg yolk and milk glaze. Now here's a quick tip for not scratching your cake tin. Use your plastic dough scraper to release the bread from the bottom. All you need to do is leave this bad boy in a rack to cool down and then tuck in. That's how you make pizza al formaggio, the Italian savoury Easter bread. And what an awesome recipe it is. It's so basic and simple and easy, but the resulting bread is stunning. If you love your cold cuts and cheese, then you should definitely make this one. And don't forget to check out more Easter breads in the Breads of Easter playlist. It's full of recipes from all over the world. And definitely watch that casatiello recipe. You might just get inspired to make something absolutely crazy. And if I can ask you for one thing, click that thumbs up button. It really helps promote the video, so it can reach more curious bakers just like you. So what do you think this cheesy bread? Have you made it before? Let me know down in the comments. If you want to see more videos like this one, click over here. Subscribe to the channel, click right here. That's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.